I worked with Dustin Hoffman at his house for 3 weeks, trying to get the screenplay into shape, which he was contracted to direct for Warner Brothers. It was a romantic comedy drama and hadn't been easy to adapt from book to script. In fact, Dustin had been working on it for quite a while with several writers, his old friend Murray Shiskel being one of them. Because Dustin was going to direct the film, he included quite a lot of camera angles and unnecessary minutiae into the script, common with writer-directors. When studio reps read screenplays, their emphasis is on the story, and scripts that have been overwritten with too much description and particularly detailed camera angles can be distracting and, frankly, off-putting. So I helped to make it a smoother read. Dustin is known to be a perfectionist, something director Sidney Pollack complained about on Tootsie. As somewhat of a perfectionist myself, I understood Dustin's need to make sure every detail was absolutely right and could also be made better. I remember an interviewer on a TV show mentioning his meticulous personality, and Dustin responding, "I'm an actor and I want to do my best work. If I was a surgeon, wouldn't you want me to be a perfectionist?" He certainly made his point. Incidentally, Warren Beatty has this similar trait. Yet both actors have worked well with Barry Levinson, because while keeping his own vision of the films he was directing, he recognized and respected these iconic actors' contributions to the scripts and characters they played. During the period I spent with Dustin, he often reminisced about the various movies he'd appeared in, such as Lenny, Little Big Man and Midnight Cowboy, and told funny and interesting anecdotes. "I'm sorry, but I've dug and dug into my memory box, but can't come up with one of those anecdotes." All I can remember thinking as I heard these stories straight from Dustin's vivid memories was, if only my ex-husband could see me now. I know it's been a while since I mentioned this, but when we were watching the Academy Awards on TV in Coventry in 1970, and Dustin won for Midnight Cowboy, my ex-husband said, "One day I'm going to be up there getting an Oscar." He never achieved that goal. Well, neither did I. But I did get a bit closer than him by actually attending the awards and holding Dustin Hoffman's Oscar for Rain Man. Then, of course, I went on to have a very good working relationship with the amazingly talented actor. At the end of my work on this particular project, which incidentally never saw the light of day, or rather, it was never given the green light by Warner Brothers, I was asked by Lee Gottsagen, Dustin's producer and brother-in-law, if I would submit my bill, and he'd pop around to my apartment the following day to pick it up, which he did. "I can't pay you this amount," he said, as he looked at my invoice. I was speechless. I didn't think I'd asked for too much, because it was actually the fee Barry Levinson always paid me for 3 weeks' work on a script. Then I was shocked when Lee said, "Marie, you did great work with Dusty, and you're worth so much more than this." I thanked him profusely when he went on to say that he was going to double the amount I'd asked for. "You deserve it," he said. I couldn't believe it. I was actually being rewarded and recognized for my work. Yes, I know that Barry did recognize me at the Writers Guild Awards when Avalon won for Best Screenplay, but I'd always had a problem asking him for more money. Now I was in a position to do that for any further projects where he needed my help, because Dustin Hoffman and Lee Gottsagen had given me the green light. Dustin's next film was Outbreak, a Warner Brothers production about a dangerous airborne virus that threatens civilization. Sounds familiar. The film was released in 1995, and as we all know too well, 25 years later, the world was affected by an outbreak very similar and just as sinister, life-threatening, and life-changing. But enough said on that. A few months went by, and I was starting to bite my fingernails since my finances were dwindling. Then, as so often happened in my life, when my back was against the wall, the universe stepped in to help. This was in the shape of Barry Levinson's new producer, Peter Giuliano, who'd been the first assistant director on Avalon. I wasn't a fan and didn't care for his gruff and egotistical manner. In fact, we'd butted heads quite a few times in the past. However, his attitude had obviously propelled him forward in his career, so he must have been doing something right, although he wasn't exactly playing nice. Anyway, Peter called me and said Barry was directing a film called Disclosure, starring Michael Douglas and Demi Moore, and asked if I would be available to help with the casting. Well, regardless of my personal feelings towards Peter, I wasn't proud enough to turn down the offer of a job. He asked me what my rate was, and when I told him, he gasped. "What? That's more than I expected. I'll have to run it by Barry, but he might not agree." "Well, tell him that's my rate now, and it's what Dustin Hoffman thinks I'm worth." I thought that might do the trick. I was standing up for myself, and if Barry had said it was too much, I was willing to walk away, even though I needed the job. Admittedly, I wasn't going to be working on the script, but Barry knew I could always deliver when it came to casting actors, so I felt justified. And guess what? He agreed. Disclosure was based on a book written by Michael Crichton and focused on sexual harassment in the computer industry in Seattle. Ellen Chenoweth, who'd cast Avalon, was the casting director, and Deborah Zane and I were associate casting directors. Debbie went on to become a very sought-after casting director and was responsible for casting many successful films, including The Hunger Games. I was in charge of casting a few of the pivotal roles in the film, including Demi Moore's assistant, Mrs. Ross, who enables Moore's character Meredith in her aggressive sexual attack on Michael Douglas's character, Tom. I auditioned several actresses and read the scene with them, while my assistant, Paul Goff, who'd been my assistant on Jimmy Hollywood, recorded them on videotape. I noticed that the women seemed awkward with the dialogue in a bar scene between Mrs. Ross and a junior lawyer. It just didn't seem to fit for the era. Mrs. Ross is commenting on the dating scene and says something like, "In my day it was champagne, flowers, and Cole Porter." Well, since the film was set in the mid-90s and Cole Porter's music was most popular in the 1930s, Mrs. Ross had to have been at least 80. It wasn't realistic. I'd recently been speaking to a friend who'd just decided to dabble in the online dating world and had some funny stories. The day before, she turned up at Starbucks to meet a guy and was surprised when he went up to the counter and bought his own coffee without asking her what she'd like. Obviously, that relationship wasn't going anywhere. I thought this was a better example of dating in the 90s, and I decided to rewrite the dialogue, which went something like this. "Dating isn't how it used to be. No more nice dinners, flowers and champagne. Now it's going Dutch for coffee at Starbucks," which was appropriate because Starbucks is from Seattle. I ran it by Ellen Chenoweth and she liked it. I decided not to tell Barry, but simply change the dialogue in the scene being read by the actresses. It had been a very long day. It was probably close to 8 p.m. and I had yet to type up a list of the actors on tape with stars against people I liked, and then would drop it off at Barry's house the following morning. Then Paul said, "Marie, I think you'd be great for Mrs. Ross." let's put you on tape. I laughed, but said, oh, what the heck. I was too tired to argue. Next time, the role that was a lifesaver in more ways than one. If you're enjoying my episodes, my social media guru, Horatio, has asked that you please like the recordings, subscribe, and ring the bell to be notified when I post my next episode on Sunday. Many thanks, and your support is greatly appreciated.